for all of our kids. Kia ora.
Te ura Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. E te whare, kia ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I reckon the taxation annual rates and budget measures bill is the difference between mince on toast and a gourmet feast. It fills the spot, it sustains us, but it's hardly going to excite the masses. Mr. Speaker, I reckon it's the difference between sensible and sensational. It's a slow and steady approach to lifting the national savings rather than a slash and burn approach, or at the other end of the scale, a shop till you drop approach. Mr. Speaker, in these days where virtual social networks thrive and instant gratification is the only game in town, it sometimes appears as if there is no end to the levels of sensationalism we've come to expect with any event, including the annual budget of government. An economic analyst on AMP Business this morning described it aptly. New Zealand is used to budgets which are either one of three gears: fifth gear, neutral, or in reverse. And simply moving forward at a moderate pace never quite seems to hit the spot, Mr. Speaker. So the latest phenomenon, if you didn't know, is a game or an activity called planking, Mr. Speaker. And it's a particularly good example of the trend to be just that bit more shocking and dramatic than the next person in line, planking. Planking is a new obsession. It requires that the subject lies flat, face down, and that's what some of these people in the House should do, and in an innovative location. And what they do, Mr. Speaker, is they photograph the pose. It's uploaded onto the social networking site. You might have seen it on TV recently. Earlier this week, the game took a bit of a sinister edge to it because a 20-year-old Brisbane man, he fell to his death while planking from the 7th floor of his house. So it's a classic case of a world where the people hunger for excitement, the sense of adventure regardless of the risk, Mr. Speaker. And so, in such a context, sir, the prospects of people welcoming a budget which emphasises balancing the books, being responsible, affordable and measured was always going to be pretty low. Let's face it, sir, steady as she goes is hardly going to raise an eyebrow, let alone get a standing ovation. But then again, building a solid platform for growth won't see us catapulting down into the death trap either. Mr. Speaker, the taxation legislation epitomises a business-as-usual approach to the economy. That's what we say. It's about enacting various strategies which support and sustain core programs while at the same time making changes which deliver better value for taxpayers. Of course, no one has ever wanted to reduce any funding to families. Ideally, that should have been the first place to look out in terms of investment. But how do we respond to extenuating circumstances of two massive earthquakes and an ongoing series of shocks to our economy without some changes which have the potential to create savings, Mr. Speaker? If one looks at this bill, then we find some answers. Slowly but surely, the government intends to reduce the amount of money it has to borrow from overseas to subsidise KiwiSaver and instead increase the amount of genuine savings from the public sector. The Māori Party supports this approach on two grounds. Firstly, we're pleased that we're lessening the reliance on foreign funds to prop up our own local economy, and part of our policy approach has been that we look at our own opportunities internally for suitable investors. Oh, quiet now, must have been a good idea. And I'm mindful of the excitement evident at the Māori Economic Summit held earlier this month, Mr. Speaker. One of the breaking news is you've already been on the plank, that's why you look that bad. One of the breaking news reports, Mr. Speaker, reports that from the day was that it reports on the study from the Business Economic Research which revealed that the value of assets held by Māori has more than doubled since 2006. Māori now have a significant asset base worth $36.9 billion compared to $16.5 billion 5 years ago. That's what the Māori Economic Summit told us. Mr. Speaker, at that summit, the thriving momentum and buying power of Māori organisations, businesses and individuals was clear for all to see. The point that Ngāi Tahu leader Mark Solomon made in the context of that summit is just as relevant to this taxation debate as it was then. Mark Solomon spoke about a recent meeting he had attended where he challenged an influential Auckland business audience to retarget their approach to iwi. The forum was a meeting hosted, probably at your meeting, Mr. Cunliffe. The forum, Mr. Cosgrove. The forum was a meeting. The forum was a meeting hosted by Sir Ron Carter, Mr. Speaker, at which 40 of the major banks and companies were present. On the wall of that hui, Mr. Speaker, was a banner that said, "Are iwi ready to invest?" Mr. Solomon said the question should be, "Are you ready to invest with iwi as we have stood in front of you for 150 years and been absolutely invisible?" End of quote. It is certainly a good question to be considering, I reckon, Mr. Speaker. Is government prepared to consider trusting in the asset base, including Māori trusts and incorporations, Māori employers and self-employed Māori? That's the question. And I want to just focus on this last group for just a minute. Mr. Speaker, the government's contribution to KiwiSaver has been the only incentive for the self-employed to participate in this scheme. As over 90% of New Zealand businesses employ less than 10 people, having small employers involved in KiwiSaver is very important. They would not divert funds from their business for retirement savings if it was not worth more than $1,000 to do so, and so we are pleased that the $1,000 incentive for new entrants to the scheme has been retained. Mr. Speaker, my colleague Tariana Turia spoke yesterday about the fact that there was not a huge uptake of KiwiSaver by Māori. For those Māori who are on the scheme, we understand it can provide higher relative payouts for lower paid, whereas they don't get any value from taxes paid in respect to the New Zealand superannuation. Mr. Speaker, the other reason we support the changes to KiwiSaver is that the increased contributions from both individuals and businesses will only happen over time, helping to give the country time to adjust. The biggest risk, of course, is that any dilution of the current benefits of the scheme may undermine the public's confidence in the complex financial product. Currently, KiwiSaver has 1.7 million New Zealanders saving for their retirement, Mr. Speaker. This provides a stabilised saving vehicle which is helping to rebuild individual and household balance sheets, and the challenge is on all of us to ensure we maintain future long-term benefits to the country while the adjustment is in place. Mr. Speaker, the other big set of changes in this bill is around working for families. In terms of the broad parameters of policy change, we support the concept of better targeting working for families, for lower income families who need more help. This fits in with the advocacy role we have played in government, fighting to protect the rights and opportunities for the most vulnerable. And so we acknowledge it will hurt higher income families in terms of the greater good for the nation, but we believe it is a change that we can support in the interests of the longer haul. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party will support this third reading of the Taxation Annual Rates and Budget Measures Bill.